Director for Ironman. Also, Sean Davidson, Head of Marketing and Communications Asia Pacific for Tata Consultancy Services, and Teck Lim, Chief Executive Officer of Sport Singapore. Ladies and gents, show your appreciation for our next speakers.
Thank you for that. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, panel. Great to see you all here. Thought we can't see you, so we're not ignoring you up the front here. The lights are pretty bright, but great to be here, running the final kilometre as we head towards lunch in this morning's marathon session. I thought it may be useful just to set the scene a little bit in terms of mass participation. I often get it asked, what is mass participation? What's mass participation sport? And until fairly recently, I would have answered that talking about probably five main verticals. 5 verticals: running, cycling, triathlon, more recently obstacle race, and probably swimming. Last year I was up in Bangkok. I've been asked to present the award for the best mass participation event at the Sports Industry Asia Awards. And the award was won by the SINA 3-on-3 basketball tournament from China. 64,000 participants. And it really got me thinking that while we have our traditional pillars of those 5 pillars, how can an event that attracts that many people, albeit in multiple cities, and grassroots football and touch football and baseball and so on, depending where you are in the world, not be classified as mass participation? And it made me recognize that we have similar challenges in those: recruiting participants, engaging with them, keeping them loyal, the different revenue models we have, the risk management, more often than not, outdoor events, whether it be on a road or in a water body or in fields, and great opportunities in terms of growing those particular events. So, yeah, acknowledge that it goes beyond the traditional pillars, and it involves probably similar stakeholders across, whether it's grassroots or whether it's a marathon or an Ironman triathlons. We've got governments, we've got cities, we've got brands who are able to utilize those events as a platform to engage. The rights holders, of which we have 2 sitting up on the stage with me here today. Not-for-profit organizations, often millions of dollars or pounds or different currencies raised. And then the whole ecosystem of suppliers that engage with ensuring that those events take place. And I guess it's fairly apt that we're sitting here on a Monday morning, the day after London Marathon. So yesterday afternoon, local time, KL time, London Marathon was run. 40,000 people started on the start line down at Greenwich with a dream. And I think one of the unique things about our industry is that participants go on a journey. Mass participation events facilitate this journey, which might start a year out, it might start 6 months out, 9 months out. When they register, they decide to go and participate. Often there's a story behind every one of those. It might be someone running in honor of a family member or friend who's passed away. It might be a bet in a pub over a beer of "I'll challenge you to the marathon." It might be running a personal best, or it might be raising money for charity. But all with that objective of getting to the finish line. And one of the other unique elements of the event, which doesn't happen in many other sports at all, is that you're on exactly the same playing field as the professional and elite athletes. Albeit that probably by the time the stragglers get in, it's a lot hotter and there's more plastic on the roads, which we're busy addressing. A big article on London Marathon about sustainability. But you get the opportunity to test yourself on exactly the same course in fundamentally similar weather conditions, and you get the opportunity to compare yourself. Football has the great opportunity to have charity and fun matches where you have a kick around with your hero, but seldom or never are you playing in a competitive environment with them, racing them, comparing time, or whatever that may be. So, you know, with that in mind, 40,000 participants in London, millions of spectators along the route engaging with the participants, millions of dollars raised for charity. And Geoff was sharing, I think, with Sean this morning over breakfast, for example, New York Marathon, $450 million worth of impact on that community in New York. So, great platform, I believe, very passionately, that it presents, mass participation presents an amazing platform for engagement across these multiple stakeholders. And I'd love to throw to the panel to get them to give us their sense of what engagement in this long journey means, and maybe starting at the far end of the line with you, please, Teck.
Well, we certainly see that mass participation events reflect the level of participation in sport and physical activity in Singapore. The more participation numbers rise, the more events start to surface. And when we think about shaping that into some form of strategy that sustains participation, we obviously try to look for pinnacle events in any particular discipline. So if it's running, we have the Standard Chartered Singapore Marathon that is a combination of a year-long series of running events in Singapore, and I think every city experiences hundreds of such events. It's good to have a pinnacle event that everybody looks forward to. But then it also gives us an opportunity to develop strategies on how people sustain that sort of level of activity day in, day out throughout the week, as well as build the sort of social connections that we want to see coming out of that participation. As Singapore looks at mass participation, we're also starting to pay attention to how traditional sports, like football, could also take on such dimensions. When you think about grassroots football and the numbers who play grassroots football, the question is, what is their mass participation equivalent that's a pinnacle of playing throughout the year?
Thank you. And Sean, maybe from a sponsor perspective, how important is that journey that the athlete goes on for you to be able to engage over an extended period of time, and maybe some examples of how you do that at TCS?
Yeah, TCS, I mean, there's really 5 key aspects of what we do as a sponsor. There's obviously brand, there's technology implementation, there's client engagement, there's our employee engagement, and there's CSR programs. I think just looking at employee engagement, we're a company of 425,000 employees, and I think average age is about 28 years old. A lot of our employees are facing the same kind of challenges that you hear about with youth today, or just fitness levels and wellness in general. People are sitting in front of computers all day. People are staring at screens. They're not getting enough exercise, overweight, early onset diabetes, all these kind of problems. For us, becoming a sponsor, a major catalyst was to help raise the bar on fitness within our company, and to be able to take that message to the world through our sponsorships. Starting with the New York City Marathon, which is the TCS New York City Marathon now, in 2013, we started a program internally called Fit for Life, really to get our employees engaged, to be able to inspire them, to align it to our sponsorship program. We've now got 175,000 employees in this program. Some of the numbers are just phenomenal. Last year, we ran something called the Billion Step Challenge, and in a 2-week period, we actually ended up clocking 3 billion steps as a company. If you look around the region, Clark Marathon in Singapore, for example, 1,200 of the runners of 7,000 were from TCS. So there's a lot of amazing figures out there for us, and success stories of our employees that have got into running, got into a culture of fitness, and it's having a major impact.
And that presumably is them. They start out doing the 1,000 steps, and then they register for a shorter distance and progress ultimately to a marathon-like. So again, it's that journey. We spoke about the journey from registration to finish line, but it becomes a lifelong journey, I guess. Yeah,
and indeed, actually, last year we had 10,500 of our employees run in the 12 marathon events that we sponsor worldwide. So it's really become a major inspiration to take up distance running and be fit.
Fantastic, thank you. Geoff, I mean, Ironman probably one of the few brands in the world that people tattoo on their body when they reach the finish line. I mean, I think that speaks something to a journey. I'd love to hear, obviously you're involved from an Ironman perspective, but obviously the rights holder of the Standard Chartered Singapore Marathon that Teck was speaking about, and we'll speak about a little bit more later, but I'd love to hear your insights from the journey perspective.
Yeah, definitely. Basically, for us, it's all about the journey. I mean, Ironman is sort of, the pinnacle of sport. It's the toughest one-day endurance event. Again, sorry. With Ironman, sorry, it is all about the journey. I mean, Ironman is it is the toughest one-day endurance sport on the planet. So it's not something that you decide to do this weekend. It's something that you'll commit 6 months, a year, maybe even 3 or 4 years of your life to get there. So for us, we're sort of at the top of the food chain in regards to endurance, but we love to see as much grassroots sports as possible, because eventually if someone does a swim, a cycle, a run, eventually they might go from a 5K run to a half marathon to a full marathon, and then maybe eventually to an Ironman. For us, it's about connecting people, creating networks, creating tribes, because most of our Ironman events sell out a good year in advance. We know who they are, what they do, where they live, all those kind of things. A lot of Ironman events can be seen as a bucket list type activity that I want to do one of those one day. They're very targeted at goal set, high achievers. But going and training by yourself is really difficult. I mean, we all wake up in the morning, there's 1,000 excuses why we don't go in for a swim or don't go for a run, don't go for a cycle. But if we can connect people with coaches, we can connect people with clubs, we can connect people with like-minded people, they're more likely to have their 5 friends waiting for them on the street corner to join in, and then that becomes part of the journey. It becomes part of working with like-minded people to get to the finish line. And that's what we try and create through Ironman and our marathons as well.
Yeah, and picking up on that, part of that, I guess, improving people's life skills. I moderated a panel at Sports Connects in China, which I think I was sharing with you, David Yang, the CEO of Wanda, who obviously owns Ironman. And he was telling the story that when you brought Ironman to China, one of the biggest challenges was most people there swim breaststroke. They didn't swim freestyle. So you had to initiate these programs to teach people to swim freestyle, which is fascinating in terms of the impact and engagement that you're creating on those communities in terms of life skills, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, I look at Malaysia. We've got Ironman Malaysia here. When we first started, we only had 3 clubs. Now we've got over 48 clubs, triathlon clubs. The growth of that event has been exponential. The economic impact from that event has been exponential. But I've got to say that the first year or two gave me a lot of grey hair. The way that we would normally run our swim courses in, say, Australia or America or Europe had to completely change. Swimming is not, the number one sport here. So there was a lot of people that were jumping into the water that were, really adamant with the Ironman brand and wanted to be an Ironman athlete, but realistically hadn't done the work to become a good swimmer, to be able to compete in a Ironman event, which is a 3.8 kilometre swim, or a half Ironman, which is a 1.9 kilometre swim. So putting lane ropes into the swim course where people could always hold on to it, resting pontoons, increasing the safety was just mandatory of what we had to do here. But now, at the event, you can see the graduation that's happened, and people have really learned how to swim, and we've got great athletes. And now they're actually going to the World Championships, which was never heard of, sort of 10 years ago, which is fantastic.
Fantastic, thank you. Gloria, coming locally, our local KL representative, and back to running. Give us your insights from a KL marathon and a Malaysian running scene, and obviously you understand the scene broadly here, but love to get your insights into the impact of the journey.
It is a lot like what Geoff and John was saying. It's actually a journey. So if you take the KL Marathon, for example, if you look at it, it is a one-day event. This year we're over the weekend because we've oversubscribed, but it is that one day. And we are in September this year, and we launched in February, and we've sold out, which means we have from now all the way through to September to actually engage with our audiences, right? To actually have our brands, the brands that are with us, be able to already start talking to them and motivating them and guiding them and making it essentially A, challenging, B, extremely fun. So you've got to make sure that your audiences enjoy what they're doing, enjoy the fact that they've set these challenges for themselves. And exactly what Ironman was saying, at the very beginning, we would have to help the market a little bit. And from a marathon perspective, you would look at maybe setting longer finishing times for them so that more people get to experience that joy of finishing. And then as the market matures a little bit more, and if we do our parts correctly, we start to train a lot of the runners. We try to impart as much guidance and knowledge, run safely, health tips, and so on and so forth. Then you start to make things a little bit more challenging, and then you will see that people keep coming back because they want to keep challenging themselves. So which is what happened. We get traditionally maybe about 40% of returning runners. If they've run the year before and the year before that, they generally tend to come back, half of our field. This year, that number went up really quickly. So what we've ended up doing was we've ended up introducing a ballot system for the balance 14,000 slots, and we've got over 35,000 entries for that 14,000 slots. So again, that builds like that whole community, and you can see how Malaysians are now wanting to go after all these races because they compete like they are athletes, like real athletes, right? Socially or otherwise, and because we have all this time to connect with them, it gives a lot of opportunity for the brands to be able to reach the audiences that they want. So.
Thanks. I'd love to pick up on that. So it gives a lot of opportunity. Give us maybe an example of a brand that you work with that's really partnering with you and doing it well and creating some great engagement.
Well, we share the same title sponsor, Singapore Marathon and the KL Marathon. Standard Chartered has been our sponsor, title sponsor for 11 years now. And so from the very beginning, obviously they will create the more obvious ones where you would have their clients or their customers get better privileges, they get discounts. I think you guys do that as well. Creating special product targeted at audiences who want to lead active lifestyles or already lead active lifestyles. There's a lot of cross-branding that you can do. So for us, just as a really quickly simple example, we have Under Armour as our official apparel, and then Under Armour would then create a branding or promotion opportunity with Standard Chartered Bank or with Jaybird, who are our headphones this year, or with our official. So it becomes like a big Standard Chartered KL Marathon campaign, but everyone's kind of involved, and you can do that, and you can build on that. And then we can do a lot. We do a lot of research. We do a lot of touch points with our runners to ask them, okay, what do you want to see? Not just from a race perspective, but from a brand perspective, from the social perspective. And then we take all that data, and then we meet up with all our brands that are supporting us to develop items or products or campaigns. And we've got so many aspects to use. We can use training, we can use education, we can go and encourage children, the youth, to run. And then, of course, there is, of course, the employee side of things. Standard Chartered Bank sends so many runners as well as volunteers. So we have a lot of bank staff that come out to our races, and they do this volunteering program, which is very positive for the bank.
Chris, maybe I could just jump in to reinforce the point about Standard Chartered. We know that a lot of the participants in these events, one of their primary motivations is health and wellness. And because in many cities and countries, the health and wellness agenda is coming front and center due to rising healthcare costs, companies like Standard Chartered are also interested then to extend that as part of their brand proposition. And so we've started to get in conversations with them as to how that might be configured to offer health and wellness programs and solutions for their clients, as well as for their retail customers. And I think this connection between sport, health and wellness, and brands is something that's going to continue to grow.
Yeah, that's great insight, isn't it? And you see it happening more and more across the globe, and absolutely crucial to have that partnership approach with it. I'd love to come back to you again, Teck. We've spoken about the growth in participants. We spoke about London Marathon and massive number of supporters. It strikes me that one of the challenges here in Asia from an engagement perspective is getting the broader community involved. And so you and Geoff and Ironman have been working to bring the Singapore Marathon into the World Marathon Majors, some incredible enhancements made to that event in the last couple of years. And my sense is that one of the pieces of the puzzle is, how do you get all of the city agencies? So, you see a London Marathon and a New York where the city embraces it, they come out, they love it, it's part of their fabric. My sense that in many Asian cities, it's completely the opposite. The marathons are pain, it's disrupting us, the uncle can't go and get his bowl of noodles on a Sunday, and so on and so on. How have you overcome some of those challenges, both at a grassroots level with the community, but also from an agency perspective, kind of getting a whole of government approach to embracing and recognizing the values, not only from a health perspective, but we're talking about the figure $450 million economic impact to a city like New York. Asian cities can benefit, and the whole ecosystem from sponsors to government and everyone benefit. Love to get some insights on that, please.
Well, I wouldn't say that we've been able to overcome all the challenges, and I think we're working very closely with Ironman to see how we can get more of the people who are typically affected by the massive road closures to get on board and to see this and embrace it as part of their overall lifestyle offering. So if you're thinking about businesses that typically are inconvenienced because they happen to line up along the road of a marathon route, I think Ironman has been working very hard to engage them and to see how they can be part of this event. I think a sports event today is no longer just a sport event. It's a lifestyle choice, and therefore it becomes a huge lifestyle event where the fringe is sometimes as important as the main event itself. You're going to get 50,000, 60,000 participating in the main event, but you're going to get hundreds and thousands more who are really part of the overall fringe. And the question then is, what is the experience that's afforded to the people who are on that fringe supporting the runners for the event? We want to make that clearer. We want to be able to make that more explicit. We want to bring in stakeholders that say, my community is involved with this. So all the companies along the route who are inconvenienced, all those people who are inconvenienced because of road closures, because they can't commute to where they like to commute, I think the key is to get them to be part of the event rather than to be avoiding the event.
You want to pick up on that?
Yeah, I was just going to add, I can guarantee that New York Marathon and London Marathon, the big majors, were probably seen as a pain in the backside as well in the early days. I always say that we're a tourism company just as much as we are an events company, and we're a bit of a circus that comes to town, and it's not until that town understands the benefits from the event that they can then embrace it and it becomes theirs. And that's truly what has happened with TCS in New York Marathon and London. They have over 300 to 400,000 applications for their 40,000 spots. New York, it's the biggest inbound weekend of the entire year, flight-wise, into New York. It beats Christmas, it beats Thanksgiving. It is a huge economic boost for that. So when we go into new regions, go into new sort of cities and the like, normally we're seen as, yes, we're closing down a lot of roads and we're a pain in the backside. But once they start seeing sort of benefits, and it has to be benefits from the top all the way down, because from government, they need to see the economic benefits, the families. It's not just the athletes that come. If you're doing an Ironman or you're doing, a major marathon, it's a significant achievement. So you're going to bring your entire family along to cheer you on at the finish line. So again, that adds to that economic benefit. The media profile that the event can give is truly significant. Again, something that tourism loves. The local taxi driver, he's shipping people to and from the airport every day, so he's starting to get a benefit from it. The restaurants, the cafes, all those type of industries start going, wow, this thing actually really works. We love this thing. Then the charity benefits. London broke the world record for a single day event. Over 100 million US they raised at last year's London Marathon, which is incredible. So the charity partners start to benefit from those things. So the other thing is the health and wellness that we sort of talk about, that kids growing up see these big iconic events, and they need to be big iconic events. and they get inspired. So they want to be more healthy, they want to be more fit, they want to go and run, they want to go and do a triathlon. So that starts to breed. And a lot of the towns that we've gone into Ironman, there seems to be more gymnasiums there, there's more bike shops there, there's more swimming centres that grow from there. And it's its own environment that sort of grows from that perspective. It takes time. And I have, you don't see anyone complaining in New York and London and Boston and Chicago about road closures. They actually embrace it. It's their big party day. It's the big rock and roll concert that comes to town, and they really enjoy it and embrace it. That takes time. And Asia and Singapore will just follow suit like that. But we need to prove ourselves on all levels of engagement, then we'll be embraced.
Yeah, that's great insights, and I think one of the keys that I think often, and we've got an international audience here who we can't see, but I believe you're still out there. Hopefully you haven't all gone off to lunch. A couple of them. But one of the things I constantly hear, people come from overseas to Asia and they think it happens overnight. It's a long play, and this is testament to it. I was at a conference last year where the NBA was talking, and they've invested 20 years in China, and that's why they're so huge now. And I think that's kind of one of the tips, whether it's mass participation, whether it's football or any other of the traditional sports. But I'm interested, you spoke about inspiration, and we're sitting here, and many people have asked me, what's mass participation doing at a football conference? In fact, even some of the panelists said, well, what insights can we give? And I think that one of those parallels of we've got these iconic football stars that bring people to the game. I'd love to hear some thoughts in terms of what are the parallels. Maybe people here in the audience might be sitting, well, what can we as football learn from what mass is doing? Is that around the elite athletes? Is it around the engagement? Just an insight to bring it into the football audience here. Anybody like to have a crack at that as a first up?
I'll jump in there. I mean, look, football is very much tribal, I feel. It's the same as what we try and connect. You've got your tribal elements to it. You want to, they're very fanatic about their team and their structure. From what we do, we try and create similar things by creating clubs, by creating sort of groups of people with like-minded values that can train together, which makes the journey a lot better. We don't want people to come into our sport and just tick the box and it's a bucket list and they've done it once. We want them to be, we want them to create a lifestyle for themselves. So they're doing Ironman for the next 5, 10, 15 years, and it's part of their lifestyle and their family's lifestyle. So I think the synergies of football and the tribalism is very much the same, because if you can create those networks, you create those communities, they're going to stay with you and be long-term more so than just, I've ticked that box and I'll go on to the next thing.
I would probably just add that I think football has done incredibly well in continuing to evolve the different ways you can play football. So whether it's small-sided games, whether it's modifying the apparatus that you can bring to a field to make it more convenient to set up a field of play, I think it's done incredibly well, and we do see a lot of grassroots competitions sprouting up all over Singapore. I think the challenge, however, is for a sport like football, is that it tends to get a lot more organized in a city that's trying to be a lot more organized. And it then becomes a problem to be able to find ways to just have a simple pickup game. A lot of the video that we saw in football happening in Asia, where it's just played in a rough patch, people just coming together behind their house to play. In a city like Singapore, it's getting increasingly difficult to find a space like that to play. And then for a government agency like ourselves, what we need to be able to do is to be quite innovative in the way we deploy the football fields we have. We've got about 120 regulation-sized football fields. We've got another 80 irregular-sized fields in Singapore, but it's generally been configured for the same game, as opposed to trying to think about how we make it more accessible to the grassroots movements that want to play, just come together today and say, if I want to play something today at this time, get out of my house. I know there's a group of people playing down there, and it's going to be fairly easy to come by. But I also think then that the grassroots movement needs to have a big pinnacle type event that many of these participants can look forward to. And I think that's where mass participation is done very well. You know, you go out jogging every day, you want to race, but you're looking forward to that pinnacle event that's going to give you that party feel, that festival, that you celebrate your journey. And today, I don't quite see enough of that in grassroots football, and something that I would be very interested to create. Something along the lines of what you said in China about the 3X basketball.
Yeah, that's great insights, isn't it? So there's lots of little fragmented tournaments, but there's not this pinnacle at the end of the year where all the six-a-side football teams come together and play in one tournament. Yeah. I'd like to shift tack a little bit, because I think one of the other real advantages of mass participation that differentiates itself from some of the traditional sports is the fact that we get access to such amazing data on our participants. So, you know, someone goes to a football game in most markets, they buy their ticket through a third-party agent. I think it's becoming more and more sophisticated. I think some of the bigger clubs probably have their own ticketing systems, but they don't know that Lim Teck Yin turned up with his son and watched the match and what size shirt he wears and all those kind of things. We have this amazing opportunity that when people sign up within reason, we can capture data and get insights into that and engage with that. Just love to anybody to have a shot. I mean, you guys have done a great thing about, you know, leveraging your data and engaging with your community at the KL Marathon, maybe starting with you, Gloria.
Yeah, so we do have, and we do collect databases over the years, and obviously you get the data that you need, and then you can skew it towards, okay, what are you focused on this year, what you focus on next year, and then you can actually add the data that you want to ask, especially post-race. I think you do the same as well in Singapore. After the race, you can ask them whatever questions you want to know, and then you can, for key learnings and how to do it and what they're looking for in races next year. And this data actually can actually go towards, maybe you want to create a new race. You know, maybe you want to talk to more people, or you want to talk to a different type of market. Maybe you want to focus on growing children's races next year, for example. If maybe we could do spin-offs, we could do for a new brand, whatever it is. But because if you've already collected this data of kind of like-minded people and people that you want to sort of think that way, especially in terms of healthy living and active lifestyles, it helps the brand a lot. So maybe you have a situation where it's the other way around, and a new brand has come to you and you've said, hey, you know, maybe I want to do a running event, or maybe I want to do a cycling event. My brand values are like this, and my targets are like this, and this is what the objectives I want to achieve. You take that, and then you take the data that you have, you study it, and then you can actually create something in between, which still gives you, it's still mass participation, it's still active lifestyle, it's still challenging, it's still fun, but it's kind of skew it towards the messaging that you want to the brand wants to impart. And that's why you see you've got so many different types of running events, right? A running event is a running event is a running event, but it really isn't. And that only comes from the fact that we have all this data, and we know what, you know, some runners, these type of runners want to do with that, or in that part of the country, they're more skewed towards a different type of run, for example. Then you've got theme runs, you've got the really serious runs, and like what we're saying, you always have to have that run that everyone works up to, but from the beginning until that, it's all about studying the data and how do you want to get those people there, right? Maybe you want to encourage people who've never run before, and therefore you encourage them and you create a theme run, a fun run that's shorter distance, a lot more social aspects thrown into it, and then the brands that are attracted to that are the ones that are going for that. And then you see that your market is going a little bit more serious. They're going after personal best. They're going after longer distances. They're going after ultras now. So what do you want to do after that with all that data? And you can see these people, some runners have run 10 marathons, 100 marathons. Now they want to go for the ultras, or they want to go something else. And then you start to collect all this, and then you can create other things. You can have the same brand that then reaches out to completely different audience and talking to them a different way, and maybe that way you engage with them a lot more. And so it's very fluid if you can keep collecting this data. It's really very interesting.
Thank you. I'm interested to bring Sean in. You haven't had much of a chance to chat in a little while, but bring you in here. But so then from a brand perspective, one of my senses is that understandably, rights holders are quite protective of their data, protective of their database, but I think sometimes one of the missed opportunities in our industry is maybe more collaboration with brands. You get big players like Geoff here and Gloria, who's a bigger size business, who potentially have the budgets to be able to interrogate that data. And then you got a lot of small players who've got this amazing data that they're not doing anything with. I mean, do you see anything from a brand perspective from TCS? How important is data? How much do you collaborate with the rights holders that you're working with, going from title of New York Marathon to app partner in Singapore and various other levels of partnership you have? How important is you as a brand, and how often, and maybe some examples of how you do that?
Yeah, Chris, we have 4 races in Asia Pacific. Getting into, we don't deal with registration, right? So we support the races mainly through app technology. So honestly, I think if you look at a race like the New York City Marathon, working with the New York Road Runners, that's a portfolio of 12 different events. I think we've probably got a lot closer relationship with them in terms of what we're doing with things around data. But honestly, it's not an area that's really come up. And I think, Geoff, working together, I think we're coming up on our 5th year. That's not something we've ever had a conversation about, really. Yeah.
To some degree, I think, we can never compete with football for eyes, so to speak. So, we're never going to get the TV broadcasts and the numbers that watch, so to speak. For us, I always say that we're more of a touchy-feely type, for sponsors. So we have a very loyal and a very engaged sort of group, whether it's Ironman or whether it's marathon. Their thirst for knowledge is very high. So to have sponsors that can interact, if you know that you're going to be training with this product on race, the race day product that they're going to have nutrition-wise, they're going to want to train on it for the 6 months leading up to it. Whether it's Under Armour or whatever clothes you're wearing, again, they want to know what they're doing. Whether it's TCS and putting together coaching plans and training plans that we can do through the app, which again is another interactive tool that provides for them. Whether it's vehicles, whether it's anything, we can really engage with them a lot better and a lot deeper than, say, on TV where you're seeing sort of sponsors, ads and logos. And I think that's the benefit of what we do. And again, it's a lot more touchy-feeling and integrated. And they're a lot more hands-on. So we're always looking for sponsors that, it's not just about throwing a product there and saying, hey, it's about how can this product work for our clientele, and 9 times out of 10 they always do. So again, the loyalty factor is a big part of what we push.
And just look, to add to that, I think in terms of data, in terms of just the raw numbers, so the scale of where things are going, especially around technology. So I mean, yesterday, if you look at the London Marathon, we broke the all-time download record with 433,000 downloads, okay? New York was last November, that was 360, and they broke London's record from a year before. So the scale there is growing and obviously represents, I think, in large part, just the interest people are having in the race. Whether that's friends and family tracking runners, because now it's not just about being a runner in the race, I think there's 40,000 runners in London, but there's 433,000 downloads. What does that say? There's a lot more spectators that are getting involved in races, and it's creating opportunities for them to get involved from anywhere in the world. And there's a lot of features within the technology that allow them to have a lot more kind of immersive experience in the race, tracking runners and whatnot. So, yeah, I think in that regard, it's creating a lot more opportunities, like Geoff says, to bring in, I think, new opportunities for sponsors or new opportunities for people to get involved in the race.
Fantastic, thank you. I think we're almost out of time. Probably about 2 minutes left. So maybe as a quick wrap up, I think it seems that we're in agreement that plenty of opportunities for engagement. Important in each market to have the pinnacle event that people can aspire to. The opportunity for role models and the impact of health and wellness. The kind of merging of government rights holder agenda and brands seeing the importance to support the health and wellness issue as we move towards a more of a kind of a preventative healthcare opportunity or necessity within our world. The importance of tribes, whether it be in football or whether it be here on the ground in Malaysia, going from 4 triathlon clubs to 40-something, I think you said, and the impact that has on people's lives. So going from that, without for a moment sounding like we're trying to compare football with and belittle football, but buying a ticket, going to a match, watching it on TV, but being able to involve, and I'm sure football supporters go and play six-a-side soccer with their fans and have lots of banter around it. But this huge journey which presents an opportunity for all of the stakeholders to really, ultimately, I think the key is have a massive impact on the lives of people over a protracted period of time. Please join me, ladies and gentlemen, thanking Gloria Ng, Geoff Meyer, Sean Davidson, and Mr. Lim Teck Yen. Thank you so much.
Very much indeed. Geoff, thank you very much, and Gloria, and also Sean, Teck, and your moderator Chris as well. Thank you very much indeed, guys. Much appreciated.